Kyle Alberta. I'm going to show you how to put back together your Cabot S103 1911. So the first thing you want to start with is the trigger. Slide pad forward right into the slot there. Make sure everything is moving freely and easily. And then you can lock that trigger in place with your magazine catch. Now this will only go one way. You want to put the knurled end in from the right side into the left. Get your flat screwdriver out. And just like when you took it apart, you'll want to push it out about another 1/8 of an inch, but the same distance it was before. This time you want to turn it clockwise. And when you get it in the right position, you'll feel it start to turn. And when it reaches the end of its limit, it'll click and it'll fall back flush with the gun. So make sure it moves freely in there. Before we forget, I always like to do the plunger assembly next. Your plunger spring with the plunger ends on it. Slide that right inside your plunger tube. The tapered end goes in first, and then make sure that that can also move freely. The next step will be your disconnector. So with the disconnector, you want to use the ball-shaped end towards the top. That needs to go through the hole in the frame, and the flat end rides right on the back of the trigger. Then the sear, you want to make sure the groove in the sear slots right over the disconnector. So once the two of those are installed, you'll need to line up the hole in the sear with the hole in the disconnector and make sure they're all aligned with the holes in the frame. Once that is all aligned correctly, you can slide the sear pin in. Then you can slide the hammer in. Line those holes up, slide the pin through. And at this point, you want to make sure that the hammer strut is up. That can just rest right on the back of the hammer for now. It needs to be out of the way for when we install the sear spring. So with the sear spring, you want to make sure the far left leaf on this is resting on the left leg of the sear, and you want to make sure that this bottom hook catches right in this groove that's machined in the bottom of the frame. That'll make sure it stays in the right spot. You do not want that slipping out of place. So next, you're going to want to slide your mainspring housing in. That'll push the spring right down and hold it in place for you. Align the hammer strut, which should swing freely down there. Align that with the cap inside of the mainspring housing. That's going to push up on your hammer. Then you can take your grip safety, slide it through the back. Make sure the hole is lined up here. And then your thumb safety pin is what goes through the hole in the frame as well as the hole in the grip safety. Now you'll push that in and it'll stop. In order to get it go past the plunger, you have to actually depress that. I like to use this widget. It's just a small plastic tool. They're like a couple of bucks. It's worth having around. And you can slide this between the frame and the thumb safety to depress that plunger end. So depress the plunger end all the way in and then push on the thumb safety. Your hammer does need to be back while you're doing this, so the thumb safety will not go into position. You want to push in on the thumb safety while depressing the plunger with the widget, and then when you pull that out, it'll click directly into place. Drop the thumb safety to its lower position so you can put the hammer back up. This will make it easier to push the mainspring housing up. It'll be under less pressure if the hammer is up. Take your mainspring pin. I like to push down on the table a little bit to get the mainspring housing to align up. And then hit it with the hammer, get it to seat in its groove, and now the lower is put back together. To reassemble the upper, start with the extractor. That goes in the far right hole in the back of the slide here. Make sure the groove in the extractor lines up with the groove in the slide. You're going to need to align the firing pin stop so that it can go through that machine slot on both of those at the same time. This can actually be kind of tricky because you're going to have to depress the firing pin while you try to line the firing pin stop up with both of those holes. So I find it easiest to depress it enough that you can get the firing pin stop to catch on that outside edge of the firing pin. And then you'll need to push it down the rest of the way with some sort of tool. Just got an Allen wrench here. You can use a toothpick or whatever you have around. And once those are all lined up, it'll slide all the way up. And when it's in position, the firing pin will click through the hole in the firing pin stop, and now you know you're good to go. Next, we'll slide the barrel in. Slide the bushing over the barrel. Just like when we took it apart, make sure that the lug goes through the opening there. Turn it as far as it will go. Slide the guide rod through the front, spring on the end of the guide rod. And you can put your frame rails right through the top there. Now, just like when we disassembled it, you're going to want to make sure that first smaller machine notch in the slide is lined up with the hole in the frame for the slide stop. And you take the slide stop, make sure it goes through both the holes in the frame as well as the barrel link. Make sure the groove machined in the lug there lines up with the plunger, and you can push it straight in and the slide forward. Now you just need to put your recoil cap in, depress the spring, turn your bushing. Usually need your bushing wrench here to turn that the rest of the way while you depress the spring. And once everything's lined up there, you'll be all set. To put your grips back on, use the supplied Allen wrench, and just thumb tight is fine on these. These are real wood grips, so you don't need to go crazy. Nice and snug. And that is how you reassemble your Cabot S103 1911.